Well, thank you, actually, and welcome to the conference to all the participants here. Actually, a big congratulations to CIAS and to Charities Council, MCCY, and all the amazing partners that just signed that MOU. Good job. I want to actually just first thank you. This is an incredible opportunity, actually, and really I want to thank you because you are the heroes of this city of good. That is probably the most important thing that I'm going to say actually today. I just you may have recalled over the last week a very strong anti-discrimination and inclusion champion, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, passed away, and she is just full of amazing quotes. A woman who just lived so passionately for a purpose till the very end. And she has this quote that says, "If you want to be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself. You will something to repair tears in your community, something to make life a little better for people less fortunate than you." And that's what I think a meaningful life is, living not for oneself, but for one's community. And I want to just say and honor you for being those true professionals. I have to admit that I am actually here on SHN. So I took some non-essential, to me essential, travel to go visit my 100-year-old grandmother actually last week. So I'm now on day 3 of this. She had lost a lot of weight, and I went to visit her. Of course, I did a COVID test upon arrival and did safe distancing and mask wearing and the rest of it, and did a lot of cooking, cleaning, and cooked with a lot of butter. But anyway, that was it was good, and she's somebody who has always been very special to me. And I think at the core of it, I think we do so much for our families, and my hope truly is that we have a society where we begin to expand what family means and who family is, and Commissioner calls us brothers and sisters. Well, he's right. If we all treated each other as brothers and sisters, we might build a lot more bridges, and not have so many different politicized echo chambers. And I think, to me, my hope really for you and for all of us today is that you as leaders in charities, who are the ones who expand the common ground, provide that moral leadership, for society. You are the ones that build the bridges that so need to be built, in society. So thank you, and that is my wish. So I'm talking about sustainability, during this period of crisis, and I'm speaking from the board leadership study that was just done, and I've just got a little QR code there. So for those of you who want to actually download the study and the rest of it, and please feel free to do that. I think a lot more of the details are in there in this handbook for nonprofit boards. Just I'll run through this super fast because I know that we're a little behind time. But the board leadership study is actually the second one that we've done since 2016. And it was really looked at both a qualitative and quantitative piece that would be relevant for NPOs to help make their boards stronger and better, for policymakers to think about the whole regulatory environment that we do operate in, and even for grant makers to think about how they could identify what they might consider strong and trusted nonprofits to invest in and to grow. This has been a larger study, and we see ourselves really as just one small part of a much bigger ecosystem. And you see on this map that we've tried to put together so many of the important partners that many of you who are actually even here today, and just members of the panel and the MOU and so forth. And our end in mind, after doing landscape studies, benchmarks, and developing frameworks and things like that, is really that we have excellence in the sector and that our nonprofits are truly trusted. So it takes a village. We got to get to it. Okay, I'll skip over these parts. You're most welcome to have a copy of the slides later on, just to let you know that the results actually are valid, because the respondents and so forth is all representative of the whole charity sector. So all of the different parts of this, from education, health, sports, environment, so on and so forth. So for those of you who want to actually download the handbook for effective nonprofit boards, this is actually not physically published yet, but we have that soft copy version online, so please feel free to grab that. So I think that's the end of the koyo, kind of like bits of it. Sustainability in times of crisis. I've distilled it down because, I didn't want to do a data vomit on you, to really 4 questions that boards can ask themselves, and I've called it the 4 R's. So if we think back about this crisis that we've been kind of going through, and now it's, a couple months down the line, and what did we notice? Actually, crisis revealed a lot of things to us, the things that were not quite right, the gaps and the needs that were there that we didn't quite notice during peacetime because things were pretty much still okay. But now we can't unsee those things, and we need to confront those challenges that we're now presented with. But I do also want to say that crisis revealed another surprising truth. And though, while we can say, money is not enough, actually there is enough when we each give of what we have. We all have what we need. The founder of a community development group in the Philippines once told me, encapsulated it as this: less for me, more for you, and enough for all. And it was tremendous to see. I think all of you can be so encouraged and heartened by the musicians who brought their music online, the artists, the people who reached out to help our migrant brothers and sisters that are out there, the hotels that also opened up rooms, the citizens who actually just went and did various public education and mobilization campaigns for PPE and the rest of it, the people who came together to help get laptops and phones and SIM cards for people who are excluded. And we also saw incredible innovation. So people who say that Singaporeans cannot innovate, they're not creative, I think that's rubbish. Actually, what we saw during this was that, well, maybe necessity is the mother of invention, and there was a need. So there was a lot of revising things that were done. The new Volunteer Management 101 that NCSS came out with, the COVID edition, IMDA with their hackathons, looking at how to bring innovation for the social good. You saw businesses actually come forth and want to, be part of the solution. Yes, businesses were struggling, but, there were a lot of businesses too that said, there are still people struggling more than us. And then we saw influencers and celebrities actually also come forward to say, look, we just got to help each other out. On giving.sg, we were completely blown away to the digital giving is still a small proportion of total giving, but our numbers just went completely through the roof. I think about 30 million went through giving.sg, 30 odd million by the end of last year. By April this year, we already passed 40. And I have to say that this was partly through, influencers and celebrities like, Nadia, who founded We the Good, who came out there and just rallied around causes and helped to educate the public with their platforms. But it was also just, regular people just sharing causes that they cared about. I mean, your causes, actually. And I think I just want to just encourage you that really we do have what it takes to overcome this and anything else that is going to come our way, and come what may. Because PM has already told us that this is not going to just go away. So what's the big lesson then around sustainability in times of crisis? Well, obviously it's to prepare well, and the saying, what you do in peacetime, what you invest in peacetime sows a dividend in crisis. Another way to think about it is, answer to the question, when is the best time to plant a durian tree? Well, it's 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. So really what we're talking about is what we can start to do today. And this is just a really funny, strange photo of a durian, like McNugget type of thing. But sorry, little comic relief. All right, so my 4R questions then: sustainability in times of crisis, and we'll just go through them, one by one. Okay. So first one then is about relationships. Do we have a stakeholder map and an engagement plan? Do we know the community that we're operating in, not just around the service user, but even the organization? Like, who are the organizational relationships? Who do you need to be in contact with? Who do you need to influence? Are you even in contact with them? Are you even influencing them? Have you thought about how to better engage with each one of these different partners? Because so many of the challenges that we face are truly, I think has been mentioned, complex, and nobody can do it alone. You need a lot more cross-sector, intra-sector even collaboration. Second one is around risk management as part of resilience. So risk and resilience, we'll go into that. And the question there is, do we have the strategic foresight and resilience needed for this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous future? Third question then is around reflections and reviews. Does our board culture self-evaluate and review plans and performance? Are we really looking at ourselves? Are we open to looking at ourselves? Are we proactive about that? And we actually found that that was one of the most highly determinative factors for an effective board, is actually the number of reviews that they actually do. And then lastly, renewal of the board. Are we proactive in succession planning, so we're staying up to date with things? Okay, so if you want to know, if you want to remember anything, it was the slide before, which I'll show again, don't worry, and it's this slide. So what we actually also discerned from the board leadership study was this, not just the landscape, like what's happening where and who's doing what, how is it benchmarked, but actually what really is an effective nonprofit board and how do we get there? And we chunked it up. We identified that there were three main dimensions of that: dynamics and culture, strategy and role, structures and processes. And we found that the most important factor contributing to an effective board was really around the aligned values and motivations of the board members and the board and management relationship. Kind of sounds intuitive, it makes sense. You get the right people, on the bus, they really want to do the right thing, they're communicating and connecting, they're working out issues with one another. That makes it a good, a highly functioning board. But what we did also find through the research, and this is a structural equation modeling for those of you who care, was that these two items actually depended upon three other parts, which was the charity's ability to have strategic foresight. Can we anticipate the challenges that are ahead? Goal clarity. Do we all know what we're doing? Do I know what I'm doing that's separate from you? And then thirdly, active participation. Being involved with the charity, being a regular advocate, spending time with service users or the community that you serve. So those kinds of participation goals helped to align values and build the board relationship. Then at the foundation of it is really the structures and processes. And I think that's a lot of what people here are also very interested in. And I'll tell you that this is really, really the foundation: governance and compliance, making sure that your board composition actually reflects and enables the strategic foresight and so forth. And then of course, just renewing on a regular basis. I mean, you think about it this way, there's no point to have this, to get along very well, go to party, get along very well, and you have sparkling conversation, but you have bad breath. The structures, processes, basic foundation stuff is really the hygiene work that is necessary for all nonprofits. So anyway, that's a little bit about the nonprofit board framework. You can check out the handbook to get the whole kit and caboodle. And there's also checklists there for each of those different 8 factors So you can go through them and, you know, just reflect for your own charity, like how are you doing on each one of those parts. Okay, so let's go through them just bit by bit. The first piece around stakeholder maps and engagement. Actually, so most charities actually recognize the importance, but they actually rate themselves as underperforming on this compared to other attributes. So that's only 1 in 3 actually had formalized plans. And well, everybody starts somewhere, right? So that's where we are right now. Let me maybe illustrate this importance of stakeholder mapping, stakeholder relationships and engagement through a case study. So during circuit breaker, I'm on the board of a normal tech secondary school in Jerome. And over half of our students have learning disabilities. More than 70% are on financial assistance, financial aid. And we knew that circuit breaker and doing home-based learning was not going to be a cakewalk. Not only did we have kids who didn't have laptops, data plans, place to study, all of that kind of thing, their homes were not even necessarily like conducive places. And so, you know, the board kind of knew this about the situation, and we got together with the management and said, look, like, can we help? What can we do to address, you know, what we know is going to be an issue for our students? And the staff said, look, you know, we're just up to our eyeballs just trying to figure out how to do home-based learning. Like, we have difficult students to begin with for the majority. Like, what are we going to do? And if we just left it to ourselves, we probably wouldn't have been able to do very much. But what the board did was we activated 2 charities that worked with more vulnerable communities, and we set up like a recruitment. We activated their community too to say, hey, look, could you just sign up to be a befriender to one of these kids so that you check in with them, and you know, you don't have to tutor them, you don't have to like, you just have to call them and say, hey, how are you doing? Everything okay? You know, literally just show them some care and concern during circuit breaker, and the tenure is circuit breaker plus 1 month, whatever that is. Circuit breaker plus 1. Will you sign up? We had over 60 people sign up actually to be mentors to 31 kids during this period. And Sport SG, bless them, you know, also none of their athletes could be training, so they came on board too, and they were part of our clickbait strategy to engage the students through this and their families. Well, the good news of this was that somehow we managed to pull it off. We tried all these different technologies, and you know, this didn't work, that didn't work, so we just had to kind of figure it out. But eventually, most people got through, and when school reopened again, 80% of the kids actually showed improvement in attendance, which was tremendous. And then when the school said, could you guys continue on till the end of the year, 80% of the befrienders that came on board signed up for sort of the phase 2. And this was really because you know, the board knew what the challenges were. The board was able to work together with the management, activate the wider community, bring people together, communicate their cause, and actually help tide through this otherwise very, very difficult period. So stakeholder mapping, why is that important? You know, we need to hear what's going on. We need to understand what the complexity of the needs on the ground actually are. And charities and nonprofits, you know, are the ones with the closest ear to the ground. And so, you know, charities need to be the one identifying, anticipating, communicating those, and reaching out to others to actually help them partner you. And one important thing that we absolutely can do, and it's so great that we have professional associations on here too, because actually there is a what we call compassion circles. Actually, Singaporeans are amazingly giving, you know, people with, and there's a lot of goodwill to want to participate. And what we've been doing with Company of Good is actually helping companies who want to do some good, to do good and do well, actually identify how they can do that with common and mutual benefit. So if you're a company, go to Company of Good. We can help you get started and get connected to charities that are needing some of that help out there. We fostered a lot of collaboration actually during this crisis period, from groups that were doing disinfecting and cleaning to groups that were giving free tutoring and getting donations to that, to others who were actually mobilizing for food services and the rest of it. So a lot of collaboration, possible, people just coming together. Second issue, reducing risk and increasing resilience. So it's both, right? And risk is really a part of a resilience strategy. And the question there we have to ask ourselves is, do we have both the foresight and resilience that's needed going forward? And I mean, I think right now we tend to focus a lot on risk management, because risk management is kind of the known knowns and even the known unknowns. But actually, what crisis is, and especially something like COVID, is actually it's the unknown unknowns. And what's needed for nonprofits to be able to respond, to the unknown unknowns is actually a very different set of skills than the skills required for risk assessment, risk evaluation, management, and communication. So let me just maybe give an example to kind of highlight this. So for risk management, I guess, gosh, maybe around in the early 2000s, I was on the board of I just joined, I was in my 20s, kind of thing. I just joined this arts, like a theater group, and I was like, oh, this is so fun, this is great. And then I realized they had no money, and that they put on all these incredible shows, but like they were totally losing money. And like you had this brilliant kind of like founder, visionary, artistic director, but actually every show lost money. And then we thought, oh my gosh, we want to do these amazing shows, but how do we start generating more cash, to enable us to do that? And so, me and this other gal were the two like young 20-something kind of people on the board. And, we had such a gracious and loving chairman, at the time, who was like, okay, let's think differently about this. Maybe what can we do? And we said, okay, look, well, if our goal, is to build like a future audience for theater, like that we will build a generation of theater goers, and we need to make some money. What can we do? Well, those two things were actually sort of nicely coincided with children's theater. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's put together children's theater. It's actually cheaper to produce. Kids can actually, come. So we develop a new audience. They're our future audience, and we get to market to their parents, and we solve the parents' problem of what do I do with my kids on the weekend. So it actually worked out, incredibly well. And fast forward many years later, actually, it became sort of the foundation for cash for the organization, which is in a much better position today than it was before. Of course, resilience is a very different thing. So that same company, during COVID, actually had to go digital. So there were a series of like COVID monologues, that were done then too. And you just have to adapt. You just have to innovate. And that's the trouble with Black Swans, is that you can't really figure out how to plan for it, because they just happen, and you don't know you need it till you need it. The problem actually that we found within the board leadership study, though, was that the skills required for resilience were actually very low. Lowly valued, I would say, on the board. So accountability, integrity, mission focus, oh my gosh, like boards thought those were so key. Commitment, trust, and nobody disagrees. I mean, that's so important. But then you have the important skills that are needed for responding in crisis, resilience, and they're actually really lowly valued. So what do we do about it? So this was also just around the preparedness for of the impact of future trends. And unfortunately, you see most of them are kind of amber and red, which means that we are below, in terms of preparedness, the impact in relation to the impact that we think these different trends will have on our charity. So this is an area actually that I think we can all level up. So what do we do? Well, I think part of this is actually just expanding your understanding of what that situation is by bringing in greater diversity onto the board. And I think what was amazing, when I was on the arts group was, the chairman really encouraged challenge and debate, and we call them resolute, loving critics. To borrow Prof. Koh's term, the company needed to hear actually that things couldn't go on just the same old way, and we needed to change. And the last thing we can do really is perform regular reviews. Like, how are we doing? Are we on track? Is this thing, is our enterprise, working well or not? And that really brings us to the next point, reflection and review. Does our board culture self-evaluate and review our plans and performance? And the good news here actually is that over the period of time from the 2016 to 2020, we've actually increased over a fourfold increase actually of board renewal plans, for example, on boards. And a number of them have identified self-evaluation. It's only about a fifth as an important attribute, but actually it's the ability of the board to think as one, to be able to self-evaluate as a whole, that actually really makes a huge difference. And unfortunately, even the boards that rated self-evaluation as important, actually most felt that they actually didn't do as well as the average score for all of the other variables. So what did we do in response to this is actually just revise our pulse check. And pulse check is really just a board self-assessment tool to help us, who run and govern nonprofits, actually just be able to do that better. And by bringing in the various perspectives, sort of 360 perspectives, to be able to do that. So our target date really is to launch fully by the end of the year, and we're already in pilot phase for some of that. So please feel free to reach out on that too. Lastly, I'm just about to wrap up. The last piece is around renewal. Are we acquiring the future-ready capabilities? So, for example, digital innovation. And are we proactive in things like succession planning? So we're looking out for the skills that we require, the competencies, the networks, the exposures that's needed to build out our board to truly be ready to do that. And I think, for the boards that were really ready for digital innovation and digital transformation, Commissioner mentioned, their fundraising has actually been very successful, and they've increased, in the hundreds of percentages, which is incredible. But I think the point is that it needs to go beyond that, and it's not just a handful, it needs to be all of us. So how we then leverage the amazing professionals that are out there, which might actually just be your daughter or your daughter's friends, to help you with some of these things, because they're not always that complex. It's just that, most of us are digital migrants, not digital natives. And what we need is more digital natives actually being able to help guide us. So enhancing these various capabilities, being able to tell your stories, doing them in kind of like fun and winsome and compelling ways, that's so important. Reaching out, finding marketers. I didn't see the Marketing Association being part of that MOU, but maybe that's the next one to go for too. How can they help you tell your story? Maybe they tell it in a way that is different from the way that you tell it, but in a way that actually connects with the people that you need to be connecting with. So this is from our grandfather's story, which I love them. They're really terrific, and they tell amazing stories about different charities there too. There is also a Tote Board fund that we're working with too, to also help charities upskill. So a lot of things out there, a lot of resources, access them, use them. Okay, so where do we go from here? Sometimes seems very confusing. In the confusion, always go back to basics. What is key out of all of this is to be clear about your values and your goals. What is your mission ultimately? And as the board, being so clear about what you are seeking to achieve, not just as an organization, but just as a societal vision. And just being clear about what you will and will not do as you navigate towards that. Second thing is really about how you do your outreach and sharing your cause and bringing on the rest of society. Like I said at the beginning, you know, you are the stewards really of our social leadership, of our moral imagination. And we need you right now. This is so, so, so important. How can you do that in a way that brings others on board and make them want to support you? So those two questions, fundamental questions, plus the 4 Rs, relationships, risk management as part of resilience, reflection, review, and renewal, are really the kind of key takeaway points for you. Please just feel free to reach out and use the pulse check as part of that support. And the rest of all the details and everything else will be in the handbook. So please feel free to take a look at that. Like I said, my slides and the rest of it will also be available if you'd like a copy for that later. So thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's build the city of good.